guys, glad to be back here with you again this week. So today I wanted to talk to you about, as a reminder, last week we looked at this little diagram, and I think the little diagram is going to come up over and over again as we go through this whole program. And I talked very much to you about the fact that we were going to look in this direction. And I just wanted to share with you a little bit about what happened with my experience of anxiety and kind of resolving anxiety. And what happened for me is that I would go to my coach, who at the time was Michael Neal, and I said to him, I really wanted to focus on this anxiety stuff. I really wanted to have it be gone. Nothing more I wanted than to have it be gone. And I would go to every coaching session and I would look in this direction and I would say, see my anxiety here, it's caused by this and the characteristics of this, and it feels like this, and I don't like this about it, and this week this is what's happened with my anxiety. And he would kindly and gently and really firmly point me in the direction of this completely different conversation, which looked to me like it had nothing to do with my anxiety. He wasn't dealing with the symptoms of my anxiety. Instead, he'd point me over here and we'd have this conversation about this thing called the principles. We'd have this conversation about how experience got created. We'd have the conversation looking at, well, what is this? What is this? What is this? Right? And he'd be continually pointing me over here. I'd want to talk about this, right? My feelings, the things that I thought were triggering my anxiety. And he'd keep pointing me back to this, and he'd be talking about things like the nature of thought, and he'd be talking about there's a greater intelligence behind the system, and I just couldn't see the relevance of it at all. But he was so certain that going in this direction was going to be helpful, that he was really, really clear about it. So I'd turn up to each call, well, I've had this going on and this going on, and he would point me back here and we'd have a conversation over here. And what happened over time is I began to look over here and I began to see for myself some of the things that he was talking about. And then I'd look back over here and my anxiety would just be gone. I'd look back over here and I'd noticed that I'd gone out without my mobile phone, or I'd gone out without my migraine tablets. I'd just forgotten them. Right? That doesn't happen when that's the thing you need to be okay. Right? But it was just, that's how effortless change can be in this conversation, is that we look over here in this direction and then stuff just happens over here without us even trying. Right? So the thing that looks scary to us just doesn't look as scary anymore. The coping strategies that we had to really make sure we manage this just start falling away on their own. There's no white knuckling, there was no any of that kind of stuff going on. It just fell away, it dissolved all on its own. And the best explanation I had for that at the time, and that was 4 years ago, was I don't know how this thing works. It's just magic. Right? I look over here and stuff over here changes. Now I have a much better understanding as to why that is the case. And what I see over and over and over again is for anyone who's up against any problem, the better understanding we have of what's going on over here, this just takes care of itself. Right? So that's kind of what the direction I'm going to be taking you in and what I want to be pointing you towards today. And I wanted to start off with talking about one of the things that I noticed that was really, really prevalent in the group. As you all introduced yourselves and kind of explained, what your experience of anxiety, all of the explanations that I saw were, I feel anxious because of this thing that happened to me. I feel anxious when I go to these places. I feel anxious when I think about this person. I feel anxious when this person talks to me in this way. I've got this thing coming up, like a trip or an event or somewhere I'd like to go with my kids, and that is making me feel really anxious. And over and over and over and over again, I saw this really common misunderstanding that 99.99999% of the whole world walks around in this misunderstanding, which is why it's no surprise to me that you are, and me too, right? And that is that it looks to us like our experience is coming into us from the outside world, that things out there have got inherently scary properties that can make us feel a certain way. So every time I try and drive on a motorway, I'll keep using that example, but that's going to be scary, right? It's a scary experience. And so motorways are scary. Now, I could kind of get the sense that that couldn't be true, because I could sit next to my husband and he would get on a motorway and he wouldn't think twice about it. He had no thinking about it whatsoever. And yet to me, it was like, well, if I wasn't going on a motorway, I wouldn't be scared. So it must be motorways causing it. It's a particular person that you think is freaking you out. Well, if that person wasn't there, I wouldn't be feeling like this. So it's got to be up to them, right? Now, this is such an amazing illusion, this gift of thought that we have. But what's really going on is that we are creating stuff inside of us and projecting it out into the world. And then we are experiencing our thinking. And the flip side of thinking, as I talked about last week, is always feeling. And this is a great metaphor that my coach Michael Neal used, but hopefully you'll get what I mean. But when we're experiencing anxiety, it's like we're projecting a picture of a scary monster on a wall, and then we're running away screaming, or trying to work out coping strategies, or trying to distract ourselves from the scary monster on the wall, right? Or just trying to hold it all together so we don't even look at it, or we try and create our whole life so we never have to go in that room where we know the scary monster is on the wall. And the amazing thing is that once we start to see that our experience of everything is created this way, not this way, right? So it's created from the inside out, not the outside in. The more we start to see the truth in that, the more we look for the scary monster, and he's just not there anymore. Or the scary monster shows up, but we have a completely different relationship with him, because he's just a scary monster that we drew on a wall. He's not really scary, right? And we start to change our relationship with our anxiety. We start to become less scared of our anxiety. And we all know that the fear of the fear is the kind of the thing that holds anxiety in place. So it might be that you see the monster out of the corner of your eye, but it's no big deal, in the same way that if you went to the movies and you saw a scary monster on the screen, you might get a bit scared for a moment or two, but then you'll remember it's a movie and it doesn't seem as scary. It just doesn't, it's not as scary. It's like having a dream with a terrifying monster in it and it feeling really completely real, and then the moment you wake up, there's no running or screaming to be done, because you see that it just vanishes, right? There's nothing there to be scared of. And so this is the first sort of element of this that I want us to try and get a feel for, and that is that our experience, our reality, is created through our thinking. I gave you a little example of that last week with talking about, you know, how I can walk into the room with my kids and 1 minute they're throwing food and I can have completely different experience of the same thing. And what I'd really love for you to do this week, and to share in the Facebook group if you feel moved to do so, is to go look in your life at places where there is a completely different experience going on with the same thing. I think in the audio that I shared with you, I described the experience of sitting and watching a football match, right? So I'm not really that interested. My kids are cheering for one team and my husband's cheering for another team, and it doesn't matter like where the goals are being scored. Some people think that's brilliant, some people think it's terrible. And what you'll do is, like, don't try and apply this to your anxiety, right? But go and look for really simple everyday places in your life where you see that this is true. So for example, you like look at something that your kids are up against, look like they're up against. So they come home and they tell you all about this big drama at school, and so said this to so and it's like it's the end of their world. And you look at it from your perspective and you can see the same events have happened, but it doesn't give you sleepless nights. Like you have different thinking about it. You think, oh, blow over, bless him, isn't it cute when they're 7? For him, it's the end of the world, right? Same events, completely different experience of it. You know, think about if you have to go and stand up and make a public speech somewhere. Like for me, I have a lot of thinking about that. That feels horrible. And yet for another person, they can stand up in front of an audience and they thrive on it, they enjoy it. It's the same experience, but a same event, but a completely different experience of it. So I want you to just notice little things in your life, and it can be as simple as, you know, this is a great one, right? Like you go look at your bank account balance, right? And if you look at it today, you'll have a particular feeling about that number, and it might be there's not enough, or it might be wow, that's plenty, or just pretty neutral, it's just a number, it's just a number in my bank account. And then you go and look at that number again next week and the week after, and it'll be the same number pretty much, but you'll have completely different experiences of the same thing every time you go look at that number. And in the same way that you can look at that number and your best friend could look at that number and she might think, wow, that's loads, and you might think that's not enough. And it's the same number, but a different experience of it. And I kind of feel like I'm hammering home a point, but this point is so fundamentally revolutionary. It's so fundamentally different from the way that we traditionally think and behave like the world works. And it's really key to anxiety. Because if you think that your experience of anxiety is being caused by the things outside of you, you are going to spend all your time, energy, effort and attention in trying to arrange the circumstances in your life so that you can be okay. Because it looks like if I'm 26 minutes from my house, I'm okay, and if I'm 28 minutes, I'm not. If I go on a plane, I'm not okay, but if I stay at home, I'm all right. If I do these 4 behaviors before I leave the house, everything will be okay. If I think about my day ahead, I'm going to freak myself out, and if I distract myself, I won't. It's like, it looks like if I say my affirmations, I'll be okay. If I do my tapping, I'll be okay, but if I don't, I won't. And it's like we try and set up all these rituals and these routines and try and change things in our outside world because we think that's what's going to make us feel okay, and it's going to keep the anxiety at bay. But the thing is, that's really hard work. You'll notice it doesn't always work. And the reason for that is it's a complete illusion. That our experience of well-being, our experience of peace of mind, and our experience of anxiety all come from the inside out. And I just want you to get, this is just the start of this conversation, so I just want you to get eyes for where this is true in your life. And really don't go look at your anxiety, because what will start happening is you're saying, well, if I'm creating this from the inside out, this is all my fault, I'm doing this to myself, like I should be able to change my thinking, like, all that stuff that I know you're all familiar with. Like, put that to one side. I just want you to look at the really, really mundane, everyday examples of where you see this to be true. Now, I'd also want to address one thing in this video, and I'm really glad, and I can't remember who it was that said it, but I'm really glad that you said this, because it was said in a couple of different places, that it feels like all I have to do is believe and have faith in this stuff, and if I just believe strong enough, then all these changes will magically happen for me, and it feels a bit like a cult or a religion or something like that. And I just wanted to put your minds at rest over that as well, because what I see is, well, for a start, there is no prescribed set of activities you must do, and otherwise doom and gloom is going to happen and the end of the world is nigh and all that kind of stuff, which I kind of associate with a cult. But it's also that I don't want you to take anything I say on faith. I want you to go look for yourself, because what I'm pointing at is true. I may or may not do a very good job at pointing at it, because sometimes it's really hard to articulate this conversation. But I know that when you start to realize what I'm saying, and by realize I mean it becomes real and true for you because you see it with your own eyes. You will see it at some point because it is true. And so that's just why I'm encouraging you to start looking, right? This is your part in this conversation. So last week I said, you know, just chill out, relax, like let me take over. And this week I'm saying, well, there is some things that you can do. You can listen to what I'm talking about. And you can go, look, when I ask you to do these kind of gentle experiments, this is your part in it over the next week. Like, go look and see where you can see that you see something and your child sees something completely differently. Where you see something and your husband sees something completely differently. Where you see something and then you see something completely different about the same things. So that's your part I'd like you to play, because I want you to start seeing this for yourself and going, oh my goodness, that is true here. It is true here. And it is true there as well. Because in actual fact, it's true everywhere. It's just some places it doesn't look that way. But when you start getting eyes for it, because when you start getting eyes for it, you start to see more and more of it all over the place. Okay, so check my notes so that if there was anything else I wanted to talk to you about this time. Oh yeah, just a couple of last final things. One is that about being in the Facebook group. So some of you find it really are not enjoying being in the Facebook group, and some people haven't joined the Facebook group, and some people are in there and loving it, right? You're all having different experiences of the same thing, right? And there's an example right there for you. Now, if you want to leave the Facebook group because you prefer to do this program on your own, please just go ahead and do that. It's really fine. Just let me know you're going solo, so that when I look at like, you know, what happens as a result of being in this conversation, I can sort of split up the going solos versus the group, so I can see how helpful the group is overall. But that's one of the situations where you think that the group is stressing you out. You think that what people are reporting and posting about in the group is revving this up for you, and that it's making it worse for you. But this is just yet another example of where your thought is creating your experience of the group. The group is neutral. There is a group and there are posts that are coming up, and then you have your experience of those. Like, I have an experience when I read the posts. You have an experience when you read the posts. Right? And sometimes you can read the posts and feel dreadful, and sometimes you read the posts and feel really excited by the hope and the possibility, and that you're not alone. And I just want you to notice the varying natures of that, because how cool would it be to see that the group doesn't create your experience, you're creating your experience from the inside out. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that some of you, I know from speaking and having conversations with some of you, are intensely frustrated and thinking, look, I know all of this, but it's not helping. And I'm scared that I'm going to get to the end of this 12 weeks and this is not going to work for me. And I can see stories of where it's working for everybody else, but it doesn't work for me. And I'm getting scared that's going to happen again. And I just wanted to say, you're not alone thinking and feeling that at all. And what I will say to you is that those of you who've been in this conversation for a while, especially, you kind of can start to think, I understand the principles, but it's not helping. I understand that my experience is created from the inside out, Nick, but it's really not helping. And I'm frustrated about that because the principles aren't helping here at all. And I want to say to you what I've said to a couple of other people, and that is, if you are experiencing anxiety and you're getting anxious about your anxiety, and your anxiety is a big deal to you, there is a missing piece of understanding that hasn't clicked for you yet. That's all. And I know you're like really keen to know, well, what is it? What is the piece of missing understanding? Like, if I could just get that, everything would be fine. And I just want you to hear me when I say there's a piece missing and we don't know what piece it is yet. And my guess is if you keep listening with an open mind, you might hear something might pop for you, something might all fall into place that you've missed, or there's just a tiny little bit that I know is already happening for some of you. It's like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize I was doing that, or oh my goodness, I didn't realize that. And suddenly seeing something for yourself that makes all of the difference. And that's what I want you to remain open-minded in this conversation, and just know that I know there are loads of places where I'm missing chunks of understanding. But I also know there's nothing I can really do about that apart from continuing the conversation. And at some point, if it's going to pop, it'll pop. It's not really on me. But that's what I want you to listen out for. If you're getting frustrated and thinking it's never going to work for me, I want you to leave every video of these videos knowing that there's hope. That if it can happen for me, if it can happen for other people, and I'm going to get more people to share their stories with you, then it is possible for you, because it's not like you're struggling from I'm going to pick a name at random, it's not like you're struggling from a Sarah-shaped disease or a Lisa-shaped disease or a Steve-shaped disease that's just affecting you. This is fundamentally, this is what's going on for anyone who has anxiety, right? That the thinking is just getting stuck, it's whirling around, it results in feelings and behaviors that look like they're coming from the outside in. And there's a missing piece of understanding somewhere here that when it clicks, will be like being on the conversation in this direction and suddenly looking around and things are changing here. So I wanted to give you hope still. I want to reassure you that we are going in the right direction, that all it is a missing piece of understanding for all of you. And my job through these 12 weeks is trying to fill the gaps and try and identify where those pieces of understanding are showing up and try and address those, which is what I've tried to do this week when I've seen that the first thing everyone's come into the group and talked about is the things that they believe cause their anxiety. And so I'm challenging you a little bit on that. I don't want you to go and look at your anxiety per se. I want you to go and look at other areas in your life where you start to see that your experience is being created from the inside out. And let me know what you see on the Facebook group. Okay guys, I will be back with you again shortly, and I wish you a anxious, relaxed, whatever week, and keep in touch with me, won't you, on the group. Okay, bye bye.